This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. It is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. It is 9:03 a.m. This is supposed to go until 12 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. This is in Building 1, Room 280. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel or join by calling 360-252-9020, PIN number 1234. My name is Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. In the boardroom is Vice Chair Ty Menster, as well as Commissioner Gary Edwards, County Manager Amir Chavez, and other staff members. Other staff members have also joined us via Zoom. We'll start today with our standing item, which is the COVID-19 update. And I see Kurt and Dr. A.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. Here's the COVID update. Information I'm going to provide to you is as of April 17th. Total cases in Thurston County, 47,132. Unfortunately, the deaths within Thurston County are 416 as reported by the state. Our 14-day 100,000 case rate is 88.7. And that is a slight uptick, and I will let Dr. Abdulmalik talk to that here in a moment as the slight uptick. Our hospitalization data as of April 18th, total hospitalizations year to date is, since March of 2020 is 2,230. Currently, the COVID patients we have in the hospitals in Thurston County are 10, with 0 suspected as COVID. The number on ventilators is 0. The ICU available bed capacity is 2 adults and 0 pediatrics, and acute bed availability is 9 adults and 0 pediatrics. Our congregate care outbreaks as of April 18th, since March of 2020, we've had a total of 190 congregate care outbreaks, and currently we have 9 congregate care outbreaks that are under investigation. The vaccine status is as of April 16th. 520,194 vaccine doses have been administered in Thurston County. The percentage of people initiating vaccine is 72.2%. The percentage of people fully vaccinated is 65.5% in the county. The percentage of people initiating vaccine age 16 or older is 82%. And then the percentage of people fully vaccinated age 16 and older is 74.4%. The percentage of population age 5 and older initiating vaccine is 76.3%. And then the percentage of population fully vaccinated age 5 and older is 69.2%. And then the percentage of eligible people receiving a booster age 12 and older is 58.7%. A couple other items following up on vaccination clinics. Clinic is open 4 days a week based on demand. It's 11 to 8 Thursday through Sunday on a weekly basis. Appointments are encouraged, but as always, they welcome walk-ins to the clinic. For testing, we continue to test today in Rochester at the roof parking lot, tomorrow at Lacey at 3811 Pacific Avenue, Thursday at the Union Gospel Mission, and then Friday at Evergreen State College. All testing locations are open 10 to 1, and the test sites will close early if testing capacity is reached, but right now they're scheduled to be open 10 to 1. With that, I'll turn this over to Dr. Abdulmalik for her comments.
Good morning, Commissioners. We are starting to see an uptick in cases in Thurston County, and we are seeing an uptick in outbreaks in congregate care settings. This is just a good time to remind everyone that if you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19, to stay home, get tested. And if you test positive on an at-home test, make sure that you notify the appropriate person at your workplace, school, child care facility, whatever that may be. Just ensure that other folks don't get sick. Our hospitalization rates within the county are holding steady. And we're continuing to watch the situation pretty closely. And with that, I'm really open to any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, this is for Kurt. You early on your statistical information, you made mention of 10. I don't know if it was beds or, and maybe ICU, but 0 with COVID. I didn't get what you meant with this.
So Edwards, what I was saying was for current hospitalization status, current COVID patients admitted to the hospitals are 10. And then we don't have any that are suspected of COVID that are admitted to the hospital right now. So 10 confirmed COVID patients in the hospitals.
I guess I'm dense. I'm not getting that. 10 are there?
10 patients are in the hospital that have been confirmed as having COVID in one of the 2 hospitals.
Okay. And what's the 0? 0 what?
Suspected. In other words, if there's somebody who's suspected COVID, but we don't have a positive test yet, and the test has been sent out for that patient, then we list them as suspected, and then we wait until we get the test results back to determine whether or not they're added to the confirmed COVID case.
Okay. Yeah, and then thank you. And Doctor, are most of those folks in the care settings that you're saying there's a bit of an uptick, are they all vaccinated people?
We do have a high level of vaccination amongst folks in long-term care facilities. We are working on booster doses in terms of helping in terms of helping facilitate access where possible. So yes, a lot of the cases are people who have been vaccinated. I think it's also good to note that that folks are having much more mild illness than they were earlier on in the pandemic with earlier variants. But it's still, we are still folks who are, 65 and older, as well as folks who are immunocompromised and have other comorbidities still remain at higher risk for severe disease. So we're just starting to see the uptick, and we're working with facilities on additional on appropriate mitigation measures.
Commissioner Menser, questions?
No questions, just Kurt, I took advantage of the services at the mall last week. Everything was well done, and please thank staff for what they're doing.
I will pass it on to staff. Thank you.
And I don't have any questions. Thank you. Next on our list is homeless strategies. And I see Keely.
Excuse me. Good morning, commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. Just a few things today. Really quickly about rent assistance, that checks are being cut every Wednesday, and starting next week, we'll be able to report the number of checks cut the previous week. So we'll be able to have those reports going forward starting next week. And then the only other thing I have to report on is I just got a text from Kim Conrad with the City of Olympia, and apparently the governor or his office, it's not clear who, called the City of Olympia and stated that they must clean Wheeler on the highway side. And so on Monday and today, and so they're out there doing an emergency clean of that site along the highway. They, according to Kim Conrad, they will not be moving people, but they will be cleaning that site pretty thoroughly because the governor has said, do it now. So that's all I really have to share today.
Thank you, Keely. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Is Tom going to give some comment on the rental assistance, or is that something you're passing on, Keely?
I asked if he's going to be on later on the agenda setting, because I invited him to come and speak on the rent assistance, but so he'll be on later. And so I asked him what should be updated during my section, and he mentioned the checks, that the checks are going out through Life Stories. I can also report that Lisa Sparkman in our office is still working every day, all day long, talking with individuals and landlords that are seeking rent assistance, and she has a couple of staff members that are working with her to make sure that the volume of calls and emails are being responded to in a very timely manner. She's working very, very hard on that. And we are also on our own able to start entering applications into the Life Stories platform, which is great. So our partner agencies, the buy and for agencies that we're working with, are able to enter people right into their platform, and as are we, so we can help speed the process along. So that is also something that Elisa is undertaking.
Would you know if Tom's received that banking information that's been requested by the county auditor from? Okay, it looks like somebody's got an answer here.
Yeah, and Commissioner, thank you. Related to that specific question, as of April 15, we have not.
Okay.
And that is included on your packet this morning.
Okay.
Is a chronological sequence of events, and that will go in more detail later on this morning, and that chronological outline of the communication with the Community Action Council, as we have not received that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keely.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No, thank you.
Keely, I was going to ask on whether checks started going out last week for rental assistance.
I believe they did on Wednesday, but we just don't have the report ready. We'll be able to do that next week.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Keely. With that, we'll go on to our next item, which is the review of the Board of County Commissioners meeting for April 19th. So we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser, the approval of the Tuesday, April 19th agenda, and the approval of the board meeting minutes from April 12th, 2022. There will be two presentations. The first one will be the proclamation for Earth Day. County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This afternoon, you have the opportunity to proclaim the week of April 22nd, 2022, Earth Day in Thurston County. We're going to have representatives this afternoon. Mr. Bob Monroe, I believe, will be in attendance, as well as Mr. Bob Barnes, and kids from the elementary school,
Marshall Middle School.
Marshall Middle School will be in attendance this afternoon as well. I'm looking forward myself for this event, and I will give again the board the opportunity to be part of this proclamation.
Thank you. Comments, questions, commissioners?
No. Okay.
With that, we'll move on to the recognition for Bicycle Commuter Challenge Month.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this recognition last week as well, for you to consider May 2022 a Bicycle Commuter Month. And Chris Hawkins, our representative for, there he goes, he's helping and everything else. I'm sure he's commuting to wherever he's at. He'll be in attendance. Forgive me if I forgot, who else is going to be this afternoon with us, Chris?
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Hawkins, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services Program Manager. And this afternoon, we'll be joined by Duncan Green, the Bicycle Community Challenge Coordinator for Intercity Transit. And he will be speaking about the themes and things you see on the proclamation. This year's theme of the Bicycle Community Challenge is take your vitamin B, as in bike.
Thank you, Chris. Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
Chris, do you know if the cities also do a bike commuter challenge month, proclamation, or anything like that? I mean, I've seen Duncan, obviously, when I was on the Intercity Transit Board, and then he comes here. Does Olympia do this, or recognize this, or Lacey, or anywhere else?
Yes, this is really a county-wide or community-wide event. So it does happen throughout Thurston County, including several of the cities having teams of their employees, and then residents from each area of Thurston County are participating as well. So it is all people are welcome to participate. All residents in Thurston County and then some people who maybe commute in from outside of Thurston County. And then Bike Month is a nationwide event, and that happens every May. So there are a wide array of communities around the United States that participate in this and encourage bicycling for transportation, bicycling for recreation, and all the health and economic and energy benefits that has.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. With that, we'll move on for the opportunity for the public to address the board and the county manager's update.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, you will probably be receiving public testimony from Mr. Pettit. He submitted an email over the weekend related to 3000 Pacific. So you might be receiving public testimony on that regard. Related to the county manager's update, I'd like to provide a couple of updates. One, I'd like to make a statement related to Mr. Pettit's comments. And let me read this statement for you that I will be making this afternoon. This is related to Mr. Pettit's comments that he might be providing today, as many other related comments that he has submitted to the Commissioner's office, alleging wrongdoing that the county is operating outside of the context of the law. All of his allegations have been discussed in many executive sessions with a deputy prosecuting attorney. And as a result, and under the advisement of legal counsel, it has been determined the county is operating within the context of the law. I just want to make sure that I make that statement this afternoon. Secondly, I would like to provide an update to the public related to the issues that we have experienced over the weekend at the Waste and Recovery Center. Late last week, the trash compactor failed. The result of that, it put us in a position that we were not able to keep up in processing the solid waste out of that facility. So just to give you additional perspective, the way we process the garbage, we compact the garbage and we put in containers. So the volume of the garbage that we process out of the Waste and Recovery Center by compacting is much greater than it isn't. So the result of that was we had to close one day at the Waste and Recovery Center over the weekend, and we closed one day on the satellite locations. I'm pleased to inform you that we have already received additional containers that we will be able to process on an open container without compacting the garbage. So we are able to keep up with the demand of the garbage that we receive, and we are not expecting to close any of the facilities, and we're planning to operate on normal hours for the next week. We are expecting that by Monday, April 25th, the trash compactor will be fixed, and I'm expecting by next week we'll be back in full operations in normal circumstances. Just want to make sure that I want to provide that to the public, and our apologies for any inconvenience that we have caused over the weekend. But I believe the public has been extremely understanding, as we have not received any particular concerns related to the closure on the facilities. This is part of the normal operations that we go through, and the garbage compactor is a key piece of equipment that we rely on. And hopefully we can be back again, normal operations next week. Any questions?
I don't have any questions necessarily, but I do have concerns. My concern is that anytime we close garbage disposal off to the public, especially where you have, and I shouldn't blame young people, I guess, but I know it happens quite a bit, where someone will hire maybe a neighborhood person or something to take things to the dump, and it's closed, and that stuff ends up along the roads or dumped where it should not be dumped. And that's my concern. And that kind of comes back to human nature, I believe, that it just seems to happen that way. So I think it is very important that we always keep our garbage situation open to the public where they can dispose of it legally. So to make sure that compactor, if that's the issue, is up and running all the time. I don't know what that takes. I don't know if it's preventive maintenance or ongoing maintenance, but it's a big concern. Even though we might not have gotten complaints today, that garbage might not have gotten even noticed yet. But one thing leads to another, and I want to do everything we can in our community to keep it as pristine as possible. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And from the staff level, we absolutely share your comments and concerns, and we share the objective that we need to minimize as much as we can the impact to our citizens. You know, as you may recall, the new contract will give us the ability to even be more responsive to these particular circumstances. And in fact, as you may recall, we're going to have the additional containers waiting on site. Under the new contract, it will allow us to process that even if we have some hiccups with the compactor. In the current contract, we don't have that queue and capacity, so we have to react. So we share that, and we'll continue to absolutely do the best we can to minimize any impacts to our citizens.
Thank you.
I don't think I caught, what's the concern about young people? I didn't understand what you were saying.
Well, when they haul garbage to the dump, in my years as a policeman, I often caught, I usually didn't catch senior citizens dumping garbage in an illegal fashion, but I often caught young people. And they'd been given $20 by the neighbor to run to the dump, and then they take advantage of that once in a while. So yes, I'm kind of categorizing, if I have to pick old people or young people, it's young people as a general rule that end up dumping garbage where it shouldn't be dumped. And anytime we put a roadblock in front of those folks that are going to the dump, it just adds to that potential dumping. That's the only thing I'm commenting on. We don't usually see it from the old folks.
Ramiro, so we're basically just bringing in extra containers and then hauling uncompacted garbage? Yeah. So and we just pay extra for extra loads?
We pay extra at the extra loads, yes.
And but we have no choice because...
Yeah, because first, and just to make your point, Commissioner, I'm just gonna use random numbers. On a normal circumstance, we probably process 1 container of compacted garbage every morning, just for talking purposes. Uncompacted may take 3. And that is really the impact. And certainly we have to pay for the additional haul. And because we
don't pay by the weight. We don't pay by the weight.
We pay by the volume.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at.
We pay by the volume. You're right.
Because if it was by weight, it wouldn't make that much difference.
It's volume because it's the container themselves.
But there's going to obviously be transportation costs, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, I mean, do we have the additional containers? I know there was an issue with the containers earlier on in the year. If, you know, it goes from 1 to 3 now, do we have all of those additional containers to be able to do this?
Yes, we have all the containers that we need to process the volume that we currently have at the work. So we do have additional, I don't know the number, but we do have additional containers that will help us to process the garbage on an open container type of a situation, uncompacted.
And then you said the compactor should be fixed by Monday?
The technician is coming April 25th, that is on Monday, and I believe we have all the parts aligned. The technician is coming from California, unfortunately, and our expectations should be up and running either the same day or maybe in a couple of days after that, next week.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to consent items. Item 3A, we only have one item, which is the approval of the voucher list. Hopefully, commissioners had a chance to review it. And if there are no comments, I'll move on to department items. Items 4A for central services, resolution and called for sealed bids for countywide security improvements project 25571.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a new item for you, and I apologize that you see this item. This is for you, for the board to consider authorized central services to call for sealed bids for a countywide security improvement project. This particular project will provide security upgrades, including new cameras, card readers, duress and lockdown buttons, and intrusion detection devices. Upgrades will be performed on 6 county campuses, buildings, and it will be the Emergency Service Center, Public Works, Building 5, here at the courthouse, the coroner's office, the Family and Juvenile Court, as well as the Public Health. This particular project was considered and approved by the Board of County Commissioners during the budget process, and you made the decisions. This will be covered a combination of the real estate excise tax one, as well as the building reserves. We estimate the construction of this project will be between $400,000 and $500,000. And Robin is here to answer.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions at this point.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
My question is, Robin or Marius, to see you there. For this first part, is it going to be basically looking for someone to provide those items or for a contractor? What is it exactly that?
We are looking for contractor through the regular bidding process.
Hey, Mariusz, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, this is Mariusz Kowalewski. I'm project manager for this particular project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Commissioner, we've already done the design work, and this will be for the actual implementation of the plan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 5A, Community Planning and Economic Development. Thank you, Marius.
Thank you.
And thank you, Robin. Interagency agreement between Washington State University Extension and Thurston County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You reviewed this item last week, and this is a yearly document the board considering approval, and this is an agreement between Thurston County and the Washington State University Extension, and this is for the total cost of $165,156, and the performance of this contract agreement is from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. As you're aware, the extension provides great services to our community, and I believe the Board of County Commissioners value this partnership on a yearly basis. The money included in this agreement is part of the 2022 approved budget, and at this point, we are not asking the board to increase any funding associated with this action.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, County Manager, I do agree that the value is there. What budget line item does this come out of?
This is the general fund.
Okay. I think this is a great partnership with the university. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't have. I agree with Commissioner Edwards. I think this is a very valuable partnership for the county. Okay. Moving on to item 6A, Emergency Services, Public Assistance Grant, FEMA funding for COVID response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the last couple of years, as part of the COVID-19 emergency response, FEMA has provided public assistance to help us mitigate the financial impacts on that response. We have been tracking about this particular assistance, and we have been documenting all the needed expenditures when we are in the position to submit for reimbursement. Well, here we are. This particular agreement it states that creates that umbrella is with the Washington State Military Department and Thurston County. They will allow us to start asking for reimbursement for all the costs associated with the pandemic response. This particular term of the contract goes back to January 20, 2020, and goes through March 22, 2024. At some point, you may know that probably the FEMA reimbursement in any other particular emergency is it doesn't cover 100%, but the president issued an order, I believe, last year. The reimbursement will be 100%. Last week, I reported that perhaps the reimbursement of 100% will lapse April 1st, 2022. That has changed, and the 100% reimbursement will be extended to June 30th, 2022. So in gist, this is the instrument that will allow us to start sending reimbursement for us to get the necessary funding back into the county. Ben Miller-Todd is here to add additional perspective, answer additional questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, do we have a dollar amount that we've documented at this point for what we'll be asking for? I mean, have we got it all added up yet, or where are we at on that process?
Commissioners, that's an ongoing process, but as of last week, we had documented potentially eligible FEMA funds of $664,000.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Munster?
Okay, well, that kind of raises the question for me. So what is the, what falls into that bucket? Just couple examples.
Absolutely. I have well over 20. I'll give you a couple. PPE, for example, falls into that bucket. Emergency Operations Center supplies, sanitation and disinfectant supplies, EMS care, clinical care patients, security and law enforcement, overtime, communications, or just to name a few.
And I believe also isolation and quarantine, if I recall. Yeah.
What, when you say isolation and quarantine?
Yeah, because we need, over the last couple of years, we have rented hotel rooms for isolation and quarantine to isolate and quarantine those individuals who do not have an option to quarantine and isolate at home.
Well, just those last two, law enforcement overtime and quarantine isolation, those are huge expenditures.
But it's only certain elements within that. It's not all inclusive.
Well, obviously on the law enforcement piece, but what about quarantine isolation?
Because there are other elements. The state also has funded portions of the isolation.
Just gaps, little
it's
gaps.
Just gaps. It's no all the cost is what we consider to be eligible costs under FEMA. That is very prescriptive.
So those are the things that may be eligible, but those are not necessarily the things that we are claiming under this FEMA award.
Well, if they're eligible, why wouldn't we claim them?
Because we are claiming many of them from other sources.
We cannot double dip.
Can't double dip, okay.
We cannot double dip.
One other thing then, on some of those things that are expendable items that were on that list, and I realize you didn't cover all of them, but you did some. Are we trying to get ahead of the curve here so that at some point, we often hear there will be another variation or a virus or whatever, so that we're a little better prepared for the next adverse situation that develops like this? Is that a legal issue? I mean, instead of paying for 5,000 masks that we got, could we keep 50,000 and have some on hand that we haven't used up, but at least we're prepared if that was the issue, if the mask was the issue? But
So
anyway.
the rules around federal awards in general and FEMA in particular are that the costs have to be reasonable and directly related to the event that you're qualified to receive the money for. So if we need 10,000 masks, and maybe we could get away with 15, but we certainly couldn't get away with 50.
Okay.
They look and examine every claim to ensure that it's reasonable and directly related to the event that you're in. So, you know, we've done some work under the US Treasury funding to do a little bit of stockpiling where we could, but it cannot be extensive or our claims will be denied.
Thank you.
And also, the FEMA funding is based on a reimbursable basis. So FEMA doesn't give somewhat of down payment, for instance. It's always based on reimbursable basis. So we have to respond. That's what we'll keep track of every single expenditure so we can get reimbursed. In this case, all the way back to 2020.
So if we were to purchase a hotel, we could get reimbursed for that? If it were used for COVID quarantine?
That may not be an eligible item, Madam Chair.
No, infrastructure is not necessarily
But
under the FEMA awards.
But we can we can get reimbursed for the rooms, just not the purchase.
Yeah, no, capital expenditures are not part of FEMA reimbursement.
Right.
Okay, any additional questions?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Ben. Moving on to Public Works, item 7A, on-call engineering and professional consultant services contracts.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a new item on your agenda for this afternoon, but this is related to the briefing you received last year from Public Works, where Public Works was requesting the board to increase the financial ceiling of current contracts we have with engineering firms. Back in 2018, the Public Works went through a request for proposals where they selected several engineering firms that can help Public Works to carry on the duties, and that varies on the many different elements of how they utilize consultants, as we heard last week. So this particular venture seems to be extremely effective because we save time when we need additional expertise that we don't have in-house. They can help us carry on with the work. And that seems to be a very even more evident when we have emergency projects. As you may recall, during the flooding, we had a landslide on a particular road where we was able to hire a consultant under this. They help us to find the right fix and provide the service to the citizens rather quickly. So the request for your consideration is not to award new contracts. It's just to authorize an amendment to increase the financial ceiling of those contracts. And those are for OTAC engineering, it goes from 600 to 800,000, AHPL from 600 to 900,000, KPFF, and SCJ Alliance from 1.2 to 1.5 million, and lastly HDR engineering from 2.5 to 3.2. And I believe Public Works staff is here to answer any additional questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
We're going to boost the ability to expend another 1,500,000, it sounds like.
Overall, yes.
Overall. And where does that come out of the budget? What line?
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends on the project. For instance, if it's road projects, it will come from the road fund. And if it's solid waste projects, will come from the solid waste fund. But none of these firms are funded by the general fund.
You know, we're getting up about kind of a plan here. I don't know how much has taken place as far as expenditures, but we're talking about $7 million or something total that would be the ceiling on what we could expend.
Since 2018.
And how many years is this gonna carry out to?
I think we have an additional 2 more years. Is that right? Rick, what is the current term of the contract?
That is correct. We're just finishing up our second option year, and we have 2 additional option years starting in August of this year.
So, and after that, we go through another request for qualifications, just to refresh the roster.
Have we got a history of, in years past, doing the same thing? That we've expended these full amounts and had to come back and then a little more?
Yes, and in fact, back in a couple of years ago, we reached, because the initial contract had a ceiling, and the board authorized increasing that ceiling at that time for some of those firms. So this is not unusual.
But on these expenditures, we don't need to go out to bid on them, or we do go out to bid on them?
We already have a contract with them.
Yeah, that's what.
And the contract was the result of a request for qualifications. So we went through the normal procurement process to select those firms. The result of that request for qualification resulted in those contracts with those firms. And right now, the amount of money on those contracts needs to be expanded.
I guess what my question is, how did we come to a dollar amount, so it would be up to whatever the highest number is? How did we come to that dollar amount without an actual bid on a project? Or is it an hourly rate, or what? How did we get to that point if we don't have any specific bid information? Early on, when we went out to the bid, we didn't have a project. We said, how much would you work for us for, I guess?
Yeah, and you're right. I think we negotiated the hourly rate.
And it comes out that high?
No, it comes
Possibly
out, no,
that high.
It comes out based on the scope of work. So we set the contracts, and we negotiated with those firms as a result for the request for qualification, how much a firm will cost the county to provide the services. And at that point, you're right, we don't have any specific project. And this is not unusual. Every single jurisdiction practice this approach. So when the need arises, and let me ask you, for instance, we need an environmental assessment of a specific project as we move along. So we ask the engineering firm how much it will cost to do the environmental assessment, and they will give us a cost.
Like a rough estimate? Or?
No, actually a cost is scope, schedule, and a budget for that specific task, right? And then we award the task under that umbrella of that contract, and they perform the task.
Where is this, or where are these dollars? Because it sounds like there's different line items that are going to cover this. Have we already approved these expenditures potentially in the budget?
Yeah, because every single project, every single capital facility project is included on either on the traffic and the transportation improvement plan or the capital facilities plan.
But we have allocated money to cover that.
Is the project cost itself. Within the project cost itself is embedded all those activities.
And we've done a specific dollar amount to a potential project. Is that how we've done it?
Yeah.
And then it'll come back in front of the Board of Commissioners before that money is paid out, or how does that work? I mean, how do we keep track of what we don't know is going to happen in the future, that potentially we're going to need the services of one of these outfits? That's where I'm
So sorry, I don't understand that question.
Well, we don't know all the requests that we might need to deal with. A environmental study about a road issue or something like that. So when we go out and ask one of these firms to do this, they're the one that should most likely do it. They seem to have the qualifications, apparently. We've already been through the bid process. But how do we know that we've got enough money set aside to do that if we don't have a line item with that as a projected capital improvement, or
You do have a line item. If I may interject, the capital budget that the board adopts is appropriated by project. So the project managers know I have $10 million to execute this project. And then they track all costs related to the project, be it a design contract or an environmental study or what have you, whatever they need to do. And then the construction itself is tracked against that project budget. And you follow best practices in capital budgeting by appropriating by project, and they can't take leftover money from another project and put it to this project. They know how much they have to spend on each one.
So follow up to that, if that project cost goes beyond what the board has approved, then we need to come back to the board to authorize additional expenditures on the project.
Right.
But the specific expenditures by consultants and any other activities associated with the project are tracked at the project level.
Okay, well, let me just pick out one issue here with the highest dollar amount, and that's the HDR engineering firm. And we're bumping that up to $3,200,000. Do we have some expectation that that's probably what that is gonna cost? And we've already budgeted that line item to show something to that extent?
I believe so. Rick, I believe that is correct.
Yes, Commissioners, this is Rick Thomas with Public Works. The increases that you see that the county managers just went over, those are based upon projections that we at Public Works have gone through on an individual project by project perspective in order to determine how much funding we think we need overall to do the host of projects that we have on our plan for this year as well as coming up in 2023.
Okay, HDR, is that part of the garbage contract?
No, this is an engineering firm.
Yeah, but I don't know, I thought there was some firm we were using. And so I'm just looking for the line item that.
HDR provided assistance on the contract related to the solid waste.
Yes, okay.
It's different.
So that's gonna come, that potentially is coming out of the solid waste budget.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm looking to protect the general fund is why I'm
So there is
scrutinizing this.
There is no general fund on any of
Well,
this.
why didn't you just tell me that up front? That would have made it a lot easier.
There is no general fund on this.
Okay, thank you. There's not that I'm not worried about other funds as well, but
I apologize if I run through that, but no, there's no general fund on any of those expenditures.
that is our only discretionary funding
And in
fund
fact,
that we
on
have.
these projects are funded by the road fund, any potential grants that we get from the state,
Okay,
and all the many different funding strategies that each project has.
thank you.
Commissioner Munzer?
The dollar amounts that are listed in here, are they aligned with the dollar amounts that we discussed in our briefing last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, yeah, and I got my question. My question's answered last week as well. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Okay, 7B, contract award for closed landfill groundwater reporting services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You also reviewed this item last week. And this is related to the obligations that we have at the closed landfill that we have at the Waste and Recovery Center in Hashpur area. You heard from Jeff last week, the landfill was closed and capped back in April 2000. And we have the obligation, he corrected me and I said corrected, is for 30 years the obligation that we have to monitor the groundwater generated by the closed landfill. We went out on a request for proposals, and on March 17, 2022, we received two for landfill groundwater reporting that we need to do as part of the requirements for the Department of Ecology. For your consideration is to award the contract to Landau and Associates. And the purpose of this contract, it will be for a maximum of 5 years. And it will be for a maximum of about $300,000 in the overall period of the 5 years. And again, Jeff Bridgeford is here to answer any additional questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards? Oh.
Yes. Jeff, you said, well, I think we had the briefing on this, I think a week ago, just quickly. And so it's 30 years that we're required to keep track of this. And how many years have we got into that 30 years so far?
We are currently 22 years into the 30 years. As the county manager mentioned, it was closed. The old Hawks Prairie landfill was closed in 2000. So we have a commitment another 8 more years.
So, I mean, potentially, let's just say it goes to 10, because I think we have to keep monitoring if there's an issue, right? Even after the 30 years.
Correct.
So we're gonna be like 300,000 for this, potentially 300,000 for the next 5, and probably the next 5 after that as well. So that'd be 600,000, not considering inflation and such. And that comes out of the solid waste fund?
That is correct.
One of these days, I'm gonna get you to throw that in on every dollar item that we do.
I'm taking mental notes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. That's all I need to know.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
No questions for me. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, next is item C, resolution and called for sealed bids for 2022 chip seal.
This is a busy time for Public Works as they're gearing up for the construction season. This is a yearly request for the Board of County Commissioners to authorize the call for seal bids to conduct the 2022, in this case, the chip seal program. And the chip seal program is a treatment that we provide to all the asphalt roadways. It will allow to extend the life expectancy of those roads for 10 years. It's a little bit different than the overlay. The overlay program is more expensive, and the life expectancy obviously is longer than 10 years. But this is a very prudent strategy that will help us to bring those roads and extend their life for an additional 10 years. The project cost at this point is we have available $2,900,000, and this is coming from the road fund, not the general fund. And hopefully we can secure the services of our contractor. I myself will be curious as to how the proposals will come in, considering the high prices of oil and that we're facing across the world, really. So hopefully we can conduct a good chip seal program this year as a result of this request. And Vasil Baroda is here to answer any questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
No.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
And Vasil, maybe you may recall last week when the department comes back with a specific award for the contract. Also, please bring the locations that we're going to be able to do in the 2022 chip seal program.
Yes, this is Vasile Borota, Associate Civil Engineer with Public Works, and attached to the AIS package, there is a map, and that shows that this year we do about 50 miles in northeast quadrant, actually about 40 miles in the northeast quadrant, and 10 miles in the southeast. And I can share the screen if it's desired to show the map.
Vasil, maybe when we have the actual bids coming in, they will determine if we can accomplish all the miles that you stated based on the costs.
Yes, that will tell us how much we can afford to do this year.
Then at that point, we'll present the board with some specific lane miles that we're going to be able to do.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next is resolution and call for sealed bids for Little Rock Road Southwest Culvert replacement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You also reviewed this item last week. For your consideration is to authorize the department to call for sealed bids for the construction of fish barrier enhancement program location. In this case is for Little Rock Southwest near the Sargent Road. This particular project will replace the existing 30-inch culvert with a 40-foot long by 15 feet wide concrete culvert. We expect that this particular construction will cost just about $1 million, and this will be covered by the real estate excise tax too, as well as a $45,000 grant from the Salmon Recovery Fund. When we receive the proposals, the staff will bring back to the board for you to consider awarding the contract to the selected contractor. Catherine, it's here for any questions.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and tackle item E as well?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Similar to the previous one, exactly under the same program, but item E is related to the inlet. This crossing the Houston Drive. And this particular project will replace the existing 48-inch culvert with a 36-foot long by 12 feet wide concrete culvert. In both items, both locations are part of the fish barrier removal program the board has authorized over the last few years, actually, which has been extremely successful.
Thank you. Catherine, anything to add?
No, but I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, questions about either item D or item E? Mr. Edwards?
I just think that it's important to let the public know that we're working on this project to the benefit of fish, but with other entities to set priorities and add spawning grounds and that type of thing. I think it is worth mentioning to the public that that's what we're doing, I think. That's it for me, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser?
Nope, gone over these before, thank you.
And I don't have any questions, thank you. Okay, item 8A, and it's from the county manager, ordinance to expand the Board of Health.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is an ordinance to expand the Board of Health makeup. And this is related to engross second substitute House Bill 1152. That requires among many other requirements, the local Board of Health to be expanded by July 1st, 2022. You held a public hearing on March 22nd. You received only one public testimony questioning as to why the expansion. You asked me to follow up with this particular citizen, which I did, and I believe he appreciated the additional perspective that in fact this is a requirement by state law, not necessarily something that is by the wish of the commissioners. So here we are, this particular ordinance, I will walk you in more detail this afternoon, expands the current Board of Health, which is composed by the 3 commissioners to 8 members. And that is, I believe, the minimum that the new law requires. The makeup will be of the 3 Board of County Commissioners will continue to serve as the Board of Health. We will add a representative from the 3 major cities And on a rotation basis, it will be most likely a council member. They will serve the term of 2 years. And then we have representatives, the other 4 representatives, one from the medical industry. The second is from the nonprofits. The third is from at large, from citizens who have been who have faced any negative public health activities over the last few years. And last but not least, it will be a representative from the local tribes that are going to be assigned by the state. That's in just the makeup of the new Board of Health. And again, if the board approves the creation of this, approving this ordinance, then we will embark on a recruitment process for the Board of County Commissioners to consider applications. And they hope that we will have this, the new Board of Health in place by July 2022. There is a lot of work behind this, and I think this is a good step for the board to consider and in relation to be responsive to the new law that passed last year.
Thank you.
I'm open for questions.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, so we're gonna add 5 more individuals
Total, yes.
total. Add, but I mean, there's gonna be a total of 8, because there's 3 county commissioners on there now.
That is correct, sir.
And when is are we actually going to name, not the individuals, but the jurisdictions on how the progression of membership is going to take place in this ordinance? So we'll say, you know, Lacey the first year, Olympia the second, or whatever. I mean,
Yes, and is the proposed resolution on that particular element is very prescriptive. It starts with the city of Lacey for 2 years. This goes to the city of Olympia, then the city of Tumwater, and then the city of Young.
and as we move forward, there must be, you've mentioned July of 2022, which is not that far away.
Not that far.
Considering certain elements have not even been met by the state yet on this requirement. So I'm wondering if we need a specific date in this resolution so that it's going to become effective on this specific date, or are we going to meet a certain criteria before this becomes a valid county ordinance?
So the ordinance will take place and will become effective as soon as the Board of County Commissioners take an action on approving it. And at that point, we'll give staff the latitude to start recruiting members based on the criteria stated on this ordinance. The result of the recruitment process they will bring those applications for the Board of County Commissioners consideration for you to approve any particular citizens to serve in this role. So I think what you also stating is the Department of Health is going through a rulemaking. There will be amended portions of the Washington Administrative Code. That rulemaking is running parallel to this process. And the rulemaking will not be finalized maybe until July of 2022.
That's where I'm going.
So what is happening is we move in parallel to this process. Pieces of the final draft of the rulemaking by the Washington State Department of Health is already included in this ordinance. And it speaks specifically about the recruitment requirements they will need to exercise. So that is included. If for any reason the final rulemaking is a little bit different from this particular ordinance, I will bring amendments for your consideration to be aligned with the rulemaking. But I think it is important for us to keep moving forward and not wait until the rulemaking is completed, because we'll be behind the 8 ball in a way.
But wouldn't we want to have a date certain that coincides with the state's requirements. They put requirements on us, but they haven't met their own requirements yet. I suppose they're going to. And I'm kind of concerned about the quorum issue. If we have a date and we haven't met the criteria to fill those different positions, is it going to be of members present on the board of the health board? I don't understand how that's going to work, because we'll need to have, if we have designated as 8 and we don't have 8 appointed, how's that going to work? That's what my concern is, that the state is not going to be ready.
The ordinance speaks about the quorum, and I will make sure that I will outline this afternoon the specifics of the quorum. And it's part of the ordinance. The rulemaking does not get to the level of determining what is a quorum. The rulemaking is specifically outlining the requirements they will need to do and the recruitment process for the new members to a great extent. The quorum, the appointments, and the terms of service is defined by you and approved by you, the Board of County Commissioners, which is included in this ordinance. This afternoon, I will walk you through in detail quorum and everything associated with the ordinance, if I may.
I mean, that sounds pretty good, except if we're behind the 8 ball and we're not done by July 1st, I take it, July 1st, 2022, and we might not be done because the state isn't done with their criteria, and we've put something in place without a finished product being there. That's my concern, that we end up at least having some criteria, and I don't know how to put that together. I'm not suggesting that I do know how. I'm just concerned that we might be caught in a bind, one of those catch-22 situations where we're going to try to do business and then we end up, I don't know, with a pandemic or something. Who would think, you know, it's probably not going to happen, but we need to think about things that are, you know, questionable. So that's my only concern. I'm all in favor of doing this. I just want to make sure we get it right. And the state has a poor history of being on time with their own deadlines. Because there's nothing in here that says they're going to get a fine or their birthday gets taken away, you know, if they don't get to this certain point. So that's my concern. I'll let it go at that.
Commissioner Mentor, questions?
So it took a while for me to understand, I think, what your concern was. And so if I can restate it maybe for myself, it's that at what point is our quorum, we enact this ordinance, at what point does the Thurston County Board of Health become the 8 members and therefore needs more for its quorum requirements to meet? Is that, like, at what, is that laid out? I mean, I've looked at the ordinance, I don't have it sitting here in front of me. Does it, you know, I reported earlier that WASAC has told us that, you know, we could continue to meet as 3. Like, you know, the only thing that, at a certain point in August, we're gonna not be able to take legislative actions if we haven't complied with the law.
Right, and
but this is a little different. This is short of a legislative action. Do we even have a quorum if we've enacted an 8-person board, but we're still waiting? We haven't gotten those people designated or whatever. What's the timing on that? I guess is kind of what I'm thinking.
so the what we're trying to meet is the July 1st, 2022 requirement to have in place the new makeup of the Board of Health. Whether we can get up to the 8 members by that time, I don't have that assurance, to be honest with you, because the recruitment process may take us a little longer.
Right.
But in the ordinance, it does speaks about the quorum. It is the sitting members who creates a quorum, not necessarily the number of individuals.
So if we've only gotten, let's say we've gotten the
4 or
city
5.
rep and the tribal rep, and we just haven't finished the 3 citizen reps. So we got 5 sitting members. Then the quorum is 3 of those 5 or something?
Right, but I think it becomes a little bit of a nuance because, for instance, you couldn't have the majority of elected officials more than the citizens' representatives. And you're right. I mean, that is this law is is a little
It's
bit
challenging.
it's challenging.
Well, I
Because
think
then-
that, but I think that from what I understood, that inadequate board couldn't meet and discuss, we just couldn't pass a valid piece of legislative act.
No policy making program, yeah, you're right, okay. That's-
And I just wanted to clarify one thing when what you said was accurate, but just to add a nuance, when you said that the board, that this is not, that when you talked about how you're how you responded to the citizen, that the board had to do this because of state law. And I'll just point out that I did cast a vote to expand the Board of Health or to explore this well before the pandemic and state law. And there wasn't a second vote in support, but just so I'm on the record.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. In fact, we had a discussion 3 years ago in a planning session.
2019 planning session, I think in June.
Yep, in which you're right, you wanted to explore expansion of the Board of Health and was not a second.
So, I guess I have a couple things. I think we're a little bit behind some of the other counties. I've been kind of touching base to see what other counties are doing, and they already have their Board of Health like ready to go. And I'm kind of just, every time they tell me that, I mean, the last one I spoke was Lewis County, and you know, they were like, oh yeah, you know, we've already done that. And so it was kind of like a oh crap moment, you know, just that we're a little bit behind. And so I definitely want to get this through. My question is in regards to kind of the elected officials and how we've prescribed that. And I have some concerns because, you know, when it says the elected, you know, it should be another elected official. It's not really prescriptive on, you know, it needs to be the biggest, you know, urban areas. And so I think with us kind of pinpointing, it will be Lacey and then Olympia, or Olympia Lacey, I'm not sure which was the order, and then Tumwater. We're also kind of, I feel, denying the access for more of our rural areas as well. And so I don't know, you know, I think I asked some questions about it at the public hearing, but, you know, it's something I've been kind of thinking about it more and seeing if it's just not better to just kind of leave it open and for them to be appointed, you know, kind of like us, instead of having each jurisdiction appoint their member. That way, you know, if whichever elected official wants to go ahead and, you know, apply for this, I think they can. But I don't know. I've just kind of been thinking of how prescriptive it kind of is and doesn't really give the opportunity for much wiggle room there.
Yeah, certainly the board has the latitude to change this ordinance as you see fit. From the staff point of view, how prescriptive we presented this to the board, with all due respect, is to avoid the uncertainty. Is to avoid as to how a new elected official will be represented in any of the cities and how the selection process will be. And we model this rotation process based on any assignment boards and commissions that any other city will go through on a yearly basis. Similar to what you go through on the assignments on your boards and commissions outside of the county. Because absent a somewhat of prescriptive approach, aside whether you like to include other jurisdictions, that's not my point. It creates, at least from my point of view, a very difficult way as to when the board is going to be selecting the individuals of the elected officials from the jurisdictions, without giving the opportunity of predictable representation by each city.
I don't think it promotes much equity, though, in terms of kind of having it in this you know, because it is a 2-year term. And, you know, if we're getting stuck of like, you know, the bigger or the bigger population places will go first, and it just doesn't promote a lot of like people wanting to be a part of this. And I think that's the point of getting more people involved into the Board of Health. Commissioner Menser, you have a question?
Well, I just have a response. I guess I disagree. I mean, on the rural, like we represent the rural areas as county commissioners, for one. And all three of us are going to sit on the Board of Health, and there's one slot for the municipality. So for us to say that we're going to not only control those 3 of the 4 elected spots, but we're also going to control that 4th spot too, and choose who we want, I don't think that's a good way to go about it vis-a-vis the cities. Yelm is ultimately going to get 2-year slot just as much as Lacey, even though Yelm is probably 20% of the size. So in a sense, the way we've set this up, I think the rural part of the county is going to be very well represented in this structure of this Board of Health. And I think it shows good collaboration with the cities to give them the opportunity to choose their own member to sit in that seat. It's 1 seat out of 8. So I guess I'm arguing for the current structure to be left intact, proposed structure.
Yeah, I understand your point, but Tenino has their own, so I wouldn't say like I'm the representative of Tenino. I mean, I represent the area, the district, but not Tenino or Bucota or Rainier. They have their own set of elected officials that represent those particular jurisdictions. So I don't know. For me, I don't quite agree with that part.
Might I comment on something, Madam Chair?
Go ahead, sir.
One thing to consider when you talk about the municipalities is, I believe the way the state law is written, that we can't have more elected officials on the new Board of Health than we do citizens, I think. So, isn't that kind of the way it is? So that limits what you can bring forward from one of the municipalities. I mean, I'm just pulling that out, and I don't have it in front of me either. But so I have to say, I kind of go, I think I go along with Commissioner Menser. Boy, that really aggravates me to have to say that. Sorry. Do you have anybody sitting in?
Robin, can you cover the rest for me, please? Robin? Can you cover the rest of the agenda for me, please?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, we'll go ahead and review our standing items. And we will move on to the public hearings. We have 2 set. First one is the Community Planning and Economic Development public hearing for Development Code Docket Item A7, Low Impact Development Code Amendment.
Yes, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to do a brief explanation of this public hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Bond here with Community Planning. The Low Impact Development Code Amendment is a targeted amendment to address existing limitations within the 2016 code that was adopted. There are no relaxations to the code. There are just additional flexibilities provided to both the public and development services staff to the Building Development Center to implement the actual code. So the code that you'll be hearing today is just kind of fixing those holes and correcting inconsistencies. I have no new information to provide, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Andrew, as this thing moves forward, are we going to make it, I don't know, say there's a shared driveway issue or something, and we're up against the limitations, I think it's 10% now. Is this going to make it a little easier for the applicant to maneuver around and still protect the environment. You said something about, I don't know if you said make it easier. I missed that part, but I mean, we want to stay within the law and make it as easy as we can for the applicant, don't we? Isn't that the goal here?
Absolutely. And there are no changes to the actual language of the ordinance. What we did with this code proposal is actually expand the option for credits for properties 2.5 acres and less, which will make it more obtainable for property owners who are looking to do a shared driveway or have long driveway or irregular shaped lots.
So that could be something like add a settling pond somewhere before it runs into the ditch or something.
There are a few different options for property owners to meet that goal.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Our next item is a public hearing for proposed condemnation.
So I'll take that. I'm Joshua Cummings, the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. So looking forward to this public hearing this afternoon. This is one of those difficult properties that has gone through the Title 26 process, code compliance. It is always difficult when we get to this place because there's obviously something that happened with the property owner that has led to this unfortunate circumstance. We have done our due diligence utilizing Title 26 throughout the past couple of years through our CPED code compliance unit to locate the property owner and work with the property owner as we do on a number of occasions in code compliance issues. This one, unfortunately, has not been successful thus far. The next step in the process is to go through the court proceedings. But before we get there, we need to have this public hearing on the condemnation process for you, the Board of County Commissioners, to hear information from the community on our next steps. Craig Challam, who I think should be on the screen here, will be the lead staff this afternoon at the public hearing, and he will provide an overview of the property, and then also the board will be provided with motions to proceed, if you so choose, on the approval of the condemnation process starting in the court proceedings. The second piece of this is we have a partner with the Olympia School District, and part of that formal partnership will be an interlocal agreement. So the decision, if the board so chooses, will be twofold: proceed on the court process for the condemnation, and also enter into the ILA with the Olympia School District in partnership. This has been a long time coming. I know the board is providing guidance and direction to find a path forward on this difficult property, and although it is unfortunate, we are looking forward to this next step. So that's the presentation on that one here. Oh, one more thing. We have actually received a couple of comments thus far, and we'll be prepared to present those this afternoon as well. Written comments. Craig, anything to add? You're on mute there, Craig.
Thank you. No, I think that sums it up very nicely.
Thank you for your work on this, Craig.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Will this explanation of what we're thinking about doing, will that have a chronological list of maybe events that have led up to this and why we're doing this, and maybe the fact that we were not able to contact owners or something like that? So the public can have a pretty good understanding of how long this has been going on and why we're doing it.
Yes, Commissioner, the overview does have a high-level chronological bullet points. Would you like to hear that? We have that handy if Craig would like to read it and see if it's sufficient.
If we don't take too long, I mean.
Yes, I want to do a time check. It is 10:27, and we have a presentation with the auditor. This, I don't want to stay here until 2 o'clock today.
So I think if Craig's got the bullet points up, the reading should take about 2 to 3 minutes.
Sure.
Hold on a second, Craig. Chair, is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay. Basically, in 2015, compliance received a request to investigate the subject property for a vacant home and trash. After visiting the site, the matter was referred to the environmental health for further action for the solid waste, that year, both CPED and environmental health staff sent warning letters. However, both property owner and the lending institution did not respond. Notice of violation and penalties, an order of abatement and of dangerous structure, and court action have been sent to the owner by certified first-class mail and returned with no forwarding address. In 2018, to be more specific, Community Planning and Economic Development deemed the structure an imminent threat to the health, safety, and general welfare. A notice of abatement was posted on the property and sent certified mail, and no response from the owner. On February 15th of 2020, the duplex structure was destroyed by fire and was secured by fencing as it stands today.
And so that is the high-level overview. You can see that the formal action began in 2015. We took a second action in 2018, and then the fire happened, and we've taken the fencing action in 2020, leading us now to this final action of condemnation potential. Is that helpful?
Yes, and obviously many community complaints, if you will, that this was a hazardous location to young people especially.
Indeed.
And something serious may happen. So I just think that the board moved ahead like we had to get this accomplished.
Agreed, and setting up a template in the process so that we know that there are these difficult properties throughout the county. And what we had hoped to engage in CPED is follow the process, Title 26, that leads us to something that we could potentially replicate in the future to increase safety and economic development within our community.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
We're behind schedule. I'll save my comments for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is review at the Transportation Benefit District Board. It will start at 3:30 or shortly thereafter. There will be an approval of the April 19th, 2022 agenda, approval of the meeting minutes for March 15th, 2022, an opportunity for the public to address the board. And then we have two items. The first one is a presentation, the state of the transportation system. Scott?
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Scott Lindblom with Public Works. The first of the two items for the TBD meeting this afternoon is a brief presentation on the state of the transportation system. We did discuss this briefly last week, but it will provide you a high-level overview of kind of what the road system entails and generally, again, at a high level, what condition it is in.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Next one is a presentation for the federal infrastructure bill funding.
Thank you again. This second and final presentation is a brief update on the status of our what we're hearing about the federal infrastructure bill funding, and I'll also touch briefly on the legislative update as it pertains to the road system at the state level.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions.
With that, we will adjourn. Next on our agenda is, thank you, Scott, is a review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting on April 26th. We will call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. The approval of the Tuesday, April 26th agenda and the approval of the board meeting minutes from April 19th, 2022. We will have a presentation. It'll be the Proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Island Heritage Month. Robin?
So thank you, Commissioner. Romero will be presenting the proclamation, and I'm not sure if we have invited people to attend.
Amy?
Hi, Amy Davis, Clerk of the Board. Yes, Commissioner Mejia's office has reached out to a few local groups and organizations who have indicated that they will be present to accept the proclamation.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move for an opportunity for the public to address the board and the county manager's update.
No information at this time.
Okay, and for consent items, we only have one matter on there, which will be the approval of the voucher list for the week of April 11th. And I guess as we get closer to that, there'll be an amount listed on there. So with that, we'll move on to department items. The first item is from the Commissioner's Office, item 4A, and Thurston County grant policy.
Yes, something I actually know something about. So this item is approval of the Thurston County grant policy. As commissioners know, we've been working on updating all county policies. The grant policy was developed by financial services staff with input by the myself, Assistant County Manager, and it went through the review process of the Policy Committee and the Financial Management Committee. We're asking that the board approve the grant policy in an expedited manner because we need to have this in place when the state auditor arrives. We have indication that it's one of the things that the auditor will ask for. So we need to have the policy in place. It did go out for review, I believe last week. Oh, it has been reviewed by legal. Yes, it has been reviewed and approved by legal. So it's gone through the entire process.
Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
Is that policy in our packet, or is it supposed to be?
I'm not sure if it is in your packet, Commissioner. We've been, it's been going through the process. I think it was just last week I got the final approval from legal. So if it is not in your packet, I'll make sure you have it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser, questions?
No, I just had the same one. I need to see it. I'm going to be expected to vote on it next week.
Okay.
Right.
So can it be provided before our agenda setting meeting next week? And then that way commissioners have a chance to review it and discuss it?
I should be able to get it to you either today or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next is Community Planning and Economic Development. Item 5A, set a public hearing for renewal of interim emergency housing ordinance 15792.
So this item is to set the public hearing for your interim emergency housing ordinance. I believe that this is the interim ordinance that has been extended in the past, and I'm going to ask Leah to just say a few words about it.
Good morning, Commissioners. Leah Davis, Community Planning. This is a renewal of the interim emergency housing ordinance. You've seen it several times. It was originally adopted in June of 2019, and this will be the 5th renewal. And I'd like to make it clear that at the board's direction, staff has been working on a permanent emergency housing ordinance. We hope to get that to the Planning Commission this summer and to the board for a public hearing before the end of the year. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Leah. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
No.
Thank you, Leah. Our next item is Emergency Services. Item 6A, Amendment 2 to Department of Health 2022-2024 Consolidated Contract.
So I thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to ask Kurt to review what this contract is.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kurt Harden, Interim Director for Public Health and Social Services. This item actually should be retitled Public Health because it's requesting that I'm going to request that the Board of County Commissioners approve Amendments 2 and 3 to the State of Washington Department of Health Consolidated Contract number CLH 31030, also referred to as the CONCON. Amendment 2 increases the contract amount by $1,720,051, and Amendment 3 increases the amount by $78,517. And this provides a maximum contract amount to date of $6,008,452. And the contract duration is January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. And then additionally, we're asking the board to authorize the Interim Director of Public Health and Social Services to sign the amendments, and any future amendments do not exceed 10%. The board approved the base contract with the Department of Health on January 11th, with the understanding that the Department of Health would send amendments with the scope of work and funding. And we've received now amendments 2 and 3. This is not the final amendments that'll come through. They will come through as the Department of Health can get the amendments prepared and sent out to the local health jurisdictions. Due to COVID, the State Department of Health is behind what their normal process is, so that's why the amendments are coming in as we're already into the fiscal year. Amendment 2 adds $1,720,051, and it has areas such as $6,000 for a swimming beach grant. It covers some of the COVID expenditures that have already been incurred. It also has money for funding for emergency preparedness to support emergency preparedness, resilience, and response. And then it has funding for carry forward implement strategies for syringe service participants in accessing vaccines, substance use disorder treatment, and other health conditions. Amendment 3 is $78,517, and that has youth tobacco vaping prevention, overdose data action to support state strategy 9, and then a carry forward for perinatal hepatitis B activities. So subject to your questions, commissioners, that's the presentation on the CON amendments 2 and 3.
Questions on item 6A or 6B, Commissioner Edwards?
Kurt made some comment early on that the title should be changed to what?
To go under the Department of Public Health and Social Services. I think it was a typo to put it under Emergency Services, and it really belongs under Public Health and Social Services.
Okay, do we want to make that adjustment then on this agenda for later? You know, we got a couple weeks to do it, or a week.
And we'll go in and adjust the AS as well.
Okay, thank you. No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser?
No, ma'am.
Okay, with that, we'll have our standing items, and we have a public hearing that will be starting at 3 or shortly thereafter. It's in regards to public hearing for fiscal year 2019 and fiscal year 2020 HUD annual action plan amendments.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. The Housing and Urban Development of the United States Department requires that recipients of CDBG and home funding prepare a plan and that the plan is has an opportunity for the public to comment. So this is the public hearing on the plan that the board has prepared. And Jacinda, what would you like to add to that?
Commissioners, and good morning, Robin. Yeah, so this public hearing on the 26th, we will ask that the public hearing take place and is closed. It is required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for our CDBG and home funds. There will be 2 amendments. So the hearing will cover both amendments, and there we do ask that a movement will be made to accept both of those amendments and submit them to HUD. Just a very quick recap of those amendments. An amendment to Program Year 19's Annual Action Plan. That amendment will move $300,000 of Community Development Block Grant COVID funds from the testing and vaccination activity to the quarantine and isolation leasing and operations activity. The second amendment is to the Program Year 20 HUD Annual Action Plan. That amendment will move $133,276 in home funding from the Low Impact Housing Institute's Fleetwood project to the Low Impact Housing Institute's 2828 Martin Way Phase 2 project. The public comment period for both amendments opened on March 12th. We have not received any public comments, written public comments to date. And then our public comment period will end after the public hearing. And assuming that the board approves the amendments, we will submit those to HUD and carry out those actions associated with the amendments.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I'm just a little confused on the years, 2019 and then 2020. But that's the way this is supposed to read?
Yes.
Correct.
We're just getting there late?
It is not uncommon for federal funding to be rolled forward into future years. We have a certain amount of time to spend it. And Jacinda, correct me, or did you say these are the closeout of these awards?
So these would not be the closeout for the 2019 annual action plan. When we received our CDBG COVID funds, we received those in fiscal year 2020, but our program year for HUD is different. Our program year runs from September 1st of a given year through August of the next year. So program year 19 covers September 1st of 2020 through, or excuse me, of 19 through August of 2020. So HUD did instruct us to add our COVID funds to our 19 plan. For the 2020 plan, we are again required to submit a plan each year for how we will spend those funds. It is not uncommon for capital projects, such as the ones that we're talking about here, to be allocated funds in a given program year, but actually being able to draw those funds and start the work often happens a year or two later. So that is fairly common with capital projects.
Thank you. Commissioner Menser, questions?
No. No.
Did you hear me?
Can you hear me? I said no questions. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, we couldn't hear you. Okay, thank you, Jacinda. So that will conclude the agenda for April 26th.
Excuse me, Commissioner, pardon me for interrupting, but there is one other item that Romero wanted to have added to the agenda for next week. That is an item to request qualifications for a facilitator for the stakeholder work group to update the long-term agriculture designation criteria and mapping. And this would authorize community planning to issue an RFQ, or request for qualifications, to hire a facilitator. And I don't see anyone on right now who could tell us a little more about this, but you will have more information next week.
Okay.
I'll be looking for more information, but no questions right now.
So,
Right. Yeah, I have questions about this. Okay.
Here comes Josh, if you want to.
Oh, great. Yes, that would be great.
So I didn't hear the last part of the question.
So Josh, could you tell us a little bit more about this RFQ, please?
Yep, we also have Chris Chapeau here from Community Planning and Economic Development. And first off, appreciate the funding for the facilitator for this topic. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so this is a request for qualifications to hire a facilitator that will help facilitate a stakeholder group that will move along the community-driven agriculture project. We're going to start with the long-term agricultural designation, and this just starts that process. We'll then set up the stakeholder group and move through somewhere between 6 and 10 stakeholder meetings, but they will facilitate.
So this is the professional services. A lot of times Commissioner Edwards has asked, how come we can't hire a consultant to do X, Y, or Z in terms of a topic? This is one that we know is going to be a heavy lift. We know that it needs a kind of a third-party neutral facilitator. It's going to be a hot topic because it's going to engage in where we have the agricultural lands as opposed to potential development, as opposed to potential protection. And so it was our determination, based on the board's recommendation, that we move this project forward using a consultant. And that consultant will facilitate this dialogue for the community. Is that helpful? Instead of hiring new staff, we're using the professional services budget to move it faster.
Has this been through the planning commission yet?
This is part of that process. So we need to get the stakeholders' input to then gather it and provide it to the planning commission.
Give me just an example of who may put in to do this job.
Like the facilitators.
The facilitators,
We never done this.
I mean, I worked with a facilitator for the Chehalis Basin Partnership. I don't, Cynthia Carlstad, I don't remember what firm she works for, but I could imagine her outfit being a proposer. They do environmental, they're knowledgeable with water and land use, and then they put, they facilitate groups, committees, working groups.
And do they come with an agenda or a neutral platform or?
No, that's why it's a neutral platform. That's why we are requesting the qualifications so that we can vet all of the requesters and then choose one that fits our needs. But they are a neutral party who will help facilitate the discussion because we know that this is going to be a robust and complex discussion.
Does the board approve the contractor? So you'll have a chance to vet the contract.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad we're in person a little bit. That was helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
Felt like I had one and now I've lost it. Just give me 1 second. Go ahead if you have a question, Madam Chair.
No, my questions did get an answer on kind of what they would be doing. So basically the scope of the RFQ will be just to facilitate?
Correct.
So I would say not just to facilitate. This is going to be a heavy lift, so it's going to require a lot of research to make sure that the questions that are asked are appropriate to the topic that the board wants us to address in CPA 16, the community-driven agriculture. So it's a big amount of work. And then the dialogue that comes from that is going to also need to be put into a package that the Planning Commission understands and can take action on to then present to the board. So it's a lift.
And so with these stakeholders, I mean, who will these stakeholders be and how will they be chosen?
Right, so that'll be our next step. Once we have a facilitator on board, we will then look broadly across the county for our stakeholders, but we know that we'll have staff on, we'll ask the agricultural committee, we'll look to the land use developer community for somebody, because this particular project is going to impact everybody here in Thurston County who does development. So it will be a broad stakeholder group.
Chair, you're hitting right on why this is so big. So we need to make sure that we've got all of our T's crossed and I's dotted. First step, facilitator. Next step, the conversation on the stakeholder group. Third step, the actual facilitation begins of the dialogue, and the Planning Commission participates in that, receives that information as well. Given this is such a big topic, I think that if the board is willing, we could add this to one of those check-in agendas like we do with HCP every couple of months. We check back in just to give you an update and see where we're at. Does that sound like a good idea?
Sounds to me, but how do Commissioner Edwards and Menzer feel about that?
No, that's fine. So I take it you won't be done next week.
We're driving it along though, and that's what's kind of exciting about this is we knew this was going to be a big topic. We knew we've got a list of other items that need to happen on the comprehensive docket and the development code docket. But to get this going, to have the approval in the professional services budget, to find this path forward that actually will move it faster than it would have otherwise is for us exciting. This is a new way of doing business.
Realistically, in 2023 or something.
So we had this conversation in the docket planning process. Yeah. We want to make sure that we're aligned with that. I don't have my papers.
Yeah, so it will depend on how many meetings we do need to come to some agreements with the stakeholder group, but we are targeting a scope of work that can be brought before the board and then into the Planning Commission early 2023 for final action at the end of 2023.
And that keeps us in line with the litigation that we have in play with the agricultural topic for our comprehensive plan, that we need to address all of the different land use pieces. So we're on target to continue moving forward.
Go ahead, Commissioner Menzer.
I remember my comment. I don't know if this, it probably does weave into the stakeholder group, but I just want to remind that we're balancing a lot of different interests, as you kind of point out. And one of those is climate change issues, carbon sequestration, and in terms of being consistent with our emergency declaration and our climate mitigation plan. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you, that's excellent. It's an important part of the dialogue.
Thank you. So we will be discussing this item again next week. Okay, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Chris, for stepping in. Okay, next, I want to go ahead on commissioner items and then give the commissioners a little break so they can stand up and move. So with that, we'll go on to proclamations and awards. Amy?
Good morning, Amy Davis, clerk of the board. The proclamation for Earth Day is included in your packet. Bob Barnes, Ralph Monroe, some teachers and students from Marshall Middle School will be here and attend in person this afternoon. The recognition for Bicycle Community Challenge Month is also included, and Duncan Green from Intercity Transit and Chris Hawkins will be in attendance. The draft proclamation for Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month for next week is included as well. And again, Commissioner Mejia's office has reached out to a few local organizations and groups who will attend to accept that proclamation. That is all I have.
Thank you. Questions, commissioners?
No question. No.
Okay, next, advisory boards and commissions.
There are no new applications.
And did commissioners have a chance to review the planning commissioner application I sent?
I did, yes.
I did not.
Okay.
When are you bringing that one forward, Commissioner?
Well, I brought it forward, so I was wondering, if there was any discussion on the matter, just adding it on to the either, next week's agenda.
My only question for you, I guess, is just, is this the individual also running for state legislature?
I'm not sure if she's running.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had heard that, so I was just curious.
I can check on that, but I'm not sure.
I would just be curious if she felt like she would have the campaigning for state legislatures, as you know, all-consuming, and serving on the state legislature is kind of all-consuming, and I'd just be concerned that that person might not have the time to devote to this planning commission. That was my only question on it.
Yeah, I can reach out, but I'm not sure. That's a good question. My only comment, I guess, would be that these applications, have been submitted for a while now. All of the people who applied, it's been a while, and the delay has been on my part, not on anyone else's part. So I know that an email got sent basically to the applicants and to this applicant that, I was recommending her position, and there was no feedback on whether that was, not good timing or whether she wanted to remove her application. So I'm happy to reach out again, though. Is Commissioner Edwards?
He stepped away.
So we'll move on to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I have no updates this morning.
Thank you. And then there's nothing for legislative update. I don't see anything for briefing, public hearing decisions pending, so we'll move on to Commissioner's item, dog attack complaint.
Yes, Commissioner. The first item is email in your packet with information regarding the dangerous animal complaint. I wondered if Katie was available because she has apparently been working on this item and I have not. So
the email in the packet sounds like it's been resolved in a favorable manner. So I don't know if there's more to it than that, but it was good update. I was glad to see that things got sorted out.
Yeah, I don't have, am very appreciative of Sarah Hawk's response, and I think there's going to be a transition phase, right? Just now that we've opened up, you know, to full services. So I'm glad that this is getting resolved. Okay, with that, it is 10:58. We'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we'll pick up with the rental assistance monitoring in Thurston County. It's an informational presentation by the county auditor.
Oh.
And we are back from break. It is 11:13 a.m. and we are picking up with Auditor Mary Hall, and she will be doing a presentation for us, the Treasury Emergency Rental Assistance Program Monitoring in Thurston County. Auditor Hall, I'll go ahead and hand this off to you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mejia. So can you see my screen?
We can see all the slides.
Right, I will go ahead and turn it into a slideshow. I think. I've got. Okay, there we go. You can see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go through this presentation, and then I also have Diana Benson, my Chief Deputy Auditor, and Brandon Weber, our internal auditor, available for the questioning. And if you want to get into the technical aspects of auditing. So I'm going to talk about what our responsibility is to the community, how we demonstrate accountability, talk about sub-recipient monitoring, risks to the county, and then I was thinking we could save the questions to the end. Does that work for all of you?
Works for me.
Okay, thanks. So what is our responsibility to the community? You know, we have passed through over $30 million to this program, which for us is a substantial amount of money. I think that's probably one of our larger or largest grants of this kind. And the community expects us to operate with sound fiscal management, when we provide services to our community. And ultimately, we are accountable for this money, even the pass-through money. So we work with our federal, state, and local partners to help ensure the taxpayer dollars are spent on allowable costs. And every dollar that goes to an ineligible payee is a dollar that doesn't go to the person who really needs it, who is eligible in Thurston County. So how do we demonstrate accountability? So we have the program side and we have the fiscal side. The program side is who works with all our subrecipients. And I have to say, I'm the most audited county in the department. We're audited by the State Auditor's Office. We're reviewed by the Secretary of State's office. They come and spend an entire election with us. We're audited by the Department of Licensing, and we're also required to audit and monitor our subagents. And we are required to perform subrecipient monitoring for all the grant money that we pass through to our partners. So we audit, and that can be called subrecipient monitoring, which is the junior audit. But the goal is to, we trust our partners, but we also have to verify that they have sound financial controls in place and are also being good stewards of taxpayer money. So how are subrecipient monitoring and auditing related? I guess subrecipient monitoring is proactive. It's like going in for a physical every year. You go in, make sure everything looks good. So subrecipient monitoring is smaller in scope than auditing, but it may include audit activities and or testing or both. And if we see exceptions or areas that need more research, we're going to expand the sample size and ask to see more. Just as your doctor, if they found an area of concern, they're going to ask more questions, do more tests, send you to a specialist. Because if they find things, it's a red flag or whatever, they're going to take a deeper dive into the symptoms. And that's exactly what we do when we monitor our subrecipients. So why do we have internal audit? This provides assurance that the money that we are passing through to the community is being spent on allowable costs. The internal audit is also very objective because the internal auditor reports to a committee of 3, not one individual in the county, but it provides us insight into how our programs are doing. Are funds being handled properly? Because ultimately we're accountable. But what's really important when we do the subrecipient monitoring and auditing work is you have to have communication. Communication is the most important thing. So we meet to discuss, talk to them about what to expect before we go in, and do our monitoring. We call that an entrance conference. Then we conduct interviews and develop an understanding of the program, so we can plan our work. And then we request information as we do our field work. And that's when we take a look, a random sampling of certain files and activities. Based on those, that sampling, we develop recommendations and compile preliminary results. And then at the end, we discuss the preliminary results and ask if the information is accurate. Our goal is to determine if more research is needed. So then we draft a report with our recommendations and provide it to the sub-recipient. And one of the requests in the letter is a response to every single recommendation. But this also gives them an opportunity to correct any inaccuracies. Were we missing something? Did we not look at something over here? So they have an opportunity, and we expect our sub-recipients to communicate back and forth with us, just as we communicate back and forth with the state auditor's office when they audit us. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the timeline. The monitoring and the entrance meeting began on November 29th. December is when the internal auditor did all of the monitoring and reviewed the activities. There was an exit meeting on January 4th, and we provided the monitoring report and the letter to CAC on January 24th. CAC asked for an extension, which we allowed. So we granted that on the 3rd, and their response came from CAC on the 14th. So why do we have so many meetings going into this? It's to discuss the purpose, the scope, the timing, and the results of the review. We don't want to have any surprises. We don't want them to have any surprises, but communication is everything. That is the key, but we want to get it right because all parties really need to be engaged and participate and committed to cooperation. We're partners in this, but it's important that we do these things to have good government and protect public funds, which is our responsibility. So we provided them with 4 recommendations, and these were not optional. They needed to correctly prioritize households. They needed to enhance a policy for confirming applications are accurate and complete. They needed to comply with sub-recipient monitoring regulations because they also pass through money. So they're required to monitor their sub-recipients also, and also implement measures to prevent improper payments, fraud prevention, essentially. They needed to update their policy to better identify, prevent, and investigate fraud, and also improve their internal controls by ensuring that the landlord owns or is authorized to accept payments. They also need to investigate and report to law enforcement and take any measures to recover funds if there is suspected fraud. So there were several applications that raised red flags. One of them, the payment was mailed to an address provided by the landlord. The resident who lived at the address who received the check did not know the person, nor did the person live at that address. So the person said they would return the check. That's a red flag. We sampled 20, the sample size was 20. One payment was made where the renter and landlord indicated that they lived in different units in a duplex with the A, B units. But in reviewing the assessor's website, the property address was a manufactured home. It did not have separate units. One payment was made for a house that was supposedly rented in 2020, but according to the assessor's website, was not built until 2021. And additional research with the city of Tumwater found that the certificate of occupancy was not issued until summer of 2021, more than a year later. And this same landlord had received previous payments from other rental assistance applications. We needed to look further. One payment was made for a property address that couldn't even be located through an internet search on the county assessor's website. And my understanding is they were not using this tool to research the if they were eligibility. So one payment was made to a landlord that did not have a documented connection to the property. This file contained other red flags also, like an applicant with absolutely no income who was not requesting any utilities or any other housing assistance. And the lease was from 2016, and there was no other documentation that tied the applicant to the property address. So those are the applications that raised red flags, and these are evidence of potential broader fraud, but we don't know. And this was found after only a small sampling of rental assistance. So what we asked for actually is exactly what Commerce requires in their guidance and fraud prevention. They needed steps for investigating, when to notify law enforcement, how to guarantee that if there was suspected fraud and it was found to be fraud, how those funds would be returned. So our response from CAC was really more appropriate for a conversation between the program manager and the internal auditor. It was really not a formal response to any of our questions. In fact, they did not address any of our recommendations. And in the letter, it actually says a formal response to each recommendation is requested. So a formal response should have outlined steps that they would take to tighten controls, but CAC's response did not include any of these steps. It was purely sort of deflection of any responsibility. So we are required by state law to support or to report any suspected fraud to the state auditor's office. So we did that on January 28th. On the 2nd, we requested a meeting from CAC leadership and the board because CAC is governed by a board and the CEO. So on the 3rd, I received an email from T. Walton, who declined to meet and said all correspondence was to go through the CEO, which from that point on it did. We sent meeting requests and doodle polls on the 3rd, the 8th, the 9th, and we never received a single response to any of those doodle polls. So we've been trying to reach out and meet with CAC because it's been a good partnership for decades, but we've not had a lot of luck with this. And on March 9th, I actually had a meeting with the Department of Commerce. CAC was invited, but notified us that they couldn't attend and to send another doodle poll, which we did. And they never responded. So on March 21st, due to the lack of cooperation that we were receiving from CAC, I made a formal request for all the data, which is ours via contract, and also guidelines. And March 23rd, I received a response from CAC declining to meet again, referencing the grievance. And Tom Webster also made a couple of requests for the data. On the 14th, I sent another formal request asking for the data because we needed to do a full audit. You know, we work together with our partners to get funds in the hands of the people that need these resources. I mean, we really have the same goal, but we are all responsible for preventing improper payments and fraud. And the only way we can ensure that tight controls are in place is doing sub-recipient monitoring. And during that process, we found several questionable payments indicating potential fraud. And unfortunately, we had uncooperative partners. So we asked them to take steps to prevent and follow up. And the letters that we received really never addressed the issue. So pretty much at my wit's end. So what's the risk to the county? I mean, we're going to be audited by the state auditor's office. In fact, when I let her know that I needed this data because the state auditor is coming in, then she agreed to provide it. But there have been a lot of audit findings with counties and cities over similar issues. And we take great pride on the work we do. In fact, we've had 6 clean audits in a year because of our internal audit program and because we do partner with our nonprofits to ensure that they also have tight controls. You know, and it states very clearly in 2 CFR 200, this is federal, that all pass-through entities, which is us, must monitor the activities of sub-recipients as necessary to ensure that the subaward is used for allowable costs. So every dollar that is lost to fraud is taken from an eligible household in our community. And right now we have no idea what the scope could potentially be. And I'm really hoping we don't get an audit finding because those affect our bond rating, which could increase our borrowing costs. It also increases audit costs. If we're in a low risk category with the state auditor right now, so they audit 20% of our grants. Once you go up to a high risk category, they audit 40% of your grants. And we pay their time here and their hourly rates are not cheap. So we work really hard to get clean audits, and we can't do that when we have community partners that are totally uncooperative. And when there's fraud, trust in government is eroded, and that's exactly what we try to avoid and why we like to hold hands with our partners in working with them and ensuring that they have tight internal controls. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mary. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, just let me flip through here. I've got a couple of areas marked. In November of 2021, Mary, there was the internal auditor contacted CAC to inform them of the monitoring and to schedule an entrance interview. The kickoff meeting was held on November 29th, 2021. I'm just curious who was there for that meeting. Would you know that offhand?
I'll let Brandon answer that question because he was the county representative at that meeting.
Okay.
So
which meeting, yeah. Commissioner?
On November 21st. The meeting was actually November 29th of 2021.
Brandon, do you want to answer that, please?
Yeah, let me look at my notes from that meeting, and I will respond in just a moment. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody.
Okay. And then, let's see, we don't have page numbers on this, but on your slide presentation, under Thurston County Auditor's Office, 4 recommendations, and then you list those. When you say correctly prioritize households, I didn't really understand that. What are we referring to? The address to make sure there's really a house there, or eligibility? What was that about?
Diana or Robin, there are priorities of who you see first, who's a priority to get these funds. And
okay,
maybe
rating the needs.
Yeah,
Robin.
I can jump in.
Oh.
So the program has certain requirements, federal requirements on who is served first, because there is a finite amount of money, and the feds want to ensure that certain households have priorities over others. So that is the responsibility of the entity who's distributing the funds to prioritize the households appropriately. And the review determined that while the CAC was doing some prioritization, it was not exactly what it should have been. So one of the recommendations was to appropriately prioritize the households.
Okay, and then Robin, this is maybe for you. In an earlier discussion, you had mentioned maybe offering to work with CAC early on about maybe some of these issues, maybe not. Could you clarify that a little better, please?
Yes, also in your packet is a timeline that was prepared on our history of working with the Community Action Council. In July and August of 2021, there was a perception that there was a backlog of applicants at the CAC, and the commissioners were receiving comments and complaints from constituents who were unable to get through to the CAC. They were having to wait a very long time. They couldn't get an appointment. The CAC wasn't necessarily always answering the phone. So I had met with the CAC with Tom and offered assistance both to provide capacity, short-term capacity to clear the backlog, and to offer automation. And the county had earmarked some of the recovery fund money to be able to pay for those things. But the CAC declined that assistance and indicated that they did not need the help and that they did have capacity. And you'll also see on the timeline that in August, the CAC provided an assurance to the county manager that there would be timely appointments, as in 2 weeks, that there would be timely response to phone calls and messages, and that they were working on technology that would enable online application tracking. So they asserted that they did not need help.
Okay, and then just, I think my final question is, under that time frame of August, July and August 2021, the firm Witt O'Brien's, I am not familiar with it, so could you tell me a little bit about it?
Witt O'Brien is a company, one of the many companies that has expertise in providing emergency rental assistance among other federal programs. And they were the partner who would have worked with us to provide capacity to the CAC to clear the backlog. And then they knew of a partner who would have been able to provide technology. So that was the partner that I was bringing to the table to provide assistance.
Do you know, did that group ever work with CAC prior to this?
No, they had not.
But had that group worked with us, Thurston County, prior to this?
I met the folks at Witt O'Brien's when I went to a national conference. They were working with many counties across the nation, including King County here in Washington, providing these types of services. So we had not worked with this firm in the past. It was an opportunity that presented itself. Again, when I was at a conference, we were exploring whether or not that would work. And again, the CAC declined the offer of assistance. So we said, thank you very much to Witt O'Brien's, and they continue to provide services elsewhere.
I guess it'd be safe to say they were a recognized expert in this particular field nationally?
I would absolutely agree with that.
Okay, that's it for me.
So was it to automate their processes, Robin? Is that what it would have done, or?
So there were two things that Witt O'Brien would have done. The way that the CAC was taking in applicants is on the phone. they would set up telephone interviews with applicants. So Witt O'Brien's would have offered a phone bank, if you will. They would just have provided more people to answer the phone and do the intake as support to the CAC. They would not have taken it over. It would have just expanded capacity at the CAC. The second thing that we were talking about was automating the application system, much as we have done now with Life Stories, where people who need assistance, instead of waiting for a telephone interview and having the CAC representatives input their information, instead the applicant would be able to submit their own or work with one of the partner organizations to enter their information. So we offered automation.
Just one other thing, if I could.
I see Brandon's hand up, so he might have an answer to your first question, sir.
Yeah, Commissioner Edwards, the attendees at the entrance meeting included CEO Kirsten York, the Director of Housing and Health Programs, the Housing Program Manager on this. So those three individuals on the CAC end, and then on the county end, obviously myself was there, Tom Webster and Suzette Smith from Public Health and Social Services were there. And then also, you had asked a little bit about the prioritization of assistance, and I'll give you just a quick example about why I believe that requirement was important. Number one, it was a requirement by Treasury. It was within the authorizing statute for both the Rental Assistance Program 1 and Program 2, and it required that individuals that are below 50% of the area median income are prioritized, and also prioritizing individuals that have been unemployed for 90 days preceding the application. There was some confusion about what that requirement was, and CAC was only prioritizing those individuals that met both those characteristics. So for example, you could have an individual that was below 50% of the area median income, but they happen to only be unemployed for 30 days, or maybe they had just recently got a job, they would not be prioritized. So Treasury required for this program that if you met one of those two characteristics, that you would be prioritized or put into the front of the line. And so we asked them to align their practice with that requirement from Treasury. Is that helpful?
Yes, very much so. And Robin, do you know, did CAC say they had their own expert or their own expertise or something that maybe they didn't want to have this outside group with O'Brien take a look at things?
They told us that they did not need the additional capacity to process applicants. They said that they had expanded capacity and were able to process all applicants in a timely manner. And they also, as far as the technology goes, they said that they were working on something in-house.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we weren't about to force them to accept. It was up to them to take it or not.
Sure.
They
I'm just
chose
curious
not to.
how it fits. Thank you.
Commissioner Menser?
Would that assistance, if they had taken it up, cost them money? Who was going to pay for that? How would that be funded?
We had earmarked, again, if you look at the early ARPA Recovery Fund allocations, we had earmarked, I think I earmarked like 900,000 to provide, and we said that we would pay for it. So the county would have paid for any additional cost, because that was our community, and we knew the need to get out the funding quickly and accurately.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I guess I would just ask maybe a county manager's assistant to once we conclude this conversation, you know, in the next few minutes, if we could prepare a video link with timestamps so that when we get, I think this has been a great summary of kind of what's gone on. And if we get questions from random quarters, we can shoot that out just so that it's easy for people to kind of get the overview. And I know we're potentially planning to have a meeting with nonprofit leaders, and I would ask Mary to maybe redo this, and because this is a kind of the overview, I think would be a good conversation starter for that meeting, and then we could take it from there. So thank you for putting this together, Mary.
Or I'd be happy to. It would be easy to modify this because I do believe, you know, it's important that the other nonprofits out there understand our roles in our partnership and anything we can do to make that better and make them better. I think that's our goal. So.
Right. I mean, if they think something's happening that's not this, then I want to correct that. If they don't, if this is a surprise to them that we have these obligations and that we're going to do this, I want them to know that too. And maybe it's not a good relationship if this concerns them or scares them. They need to have eyes wide open, and we need to. Everybody just needs to be really clear on the same page about what's required when we pass money to sub-recipients. So I think the education can go both ways, but it's important either way.
Okay.
Right. I would also think it's very important to note that regardless of the office or department that has these contracts and pass-through awards, we have program staff in every office and department who work closely with the providers of the services. So we want to assist them to do it the right way from the very get-go. We take time and work with our partners to ensure that they're following the proper processes for whatever type of service we're delivering. And as Mary said, it's a partnership. It really is. And we want to work with these community partners. We want to get the services out to the citizens of Thurston County.
Madam Chair.
One sec. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Mary, one of the things I've heard, right, is, you know, the term sub-recipient monitoring is not an audit. And so I was hoping you could explain that, you know, like that, you know, why it kind of is an audit and why that term is used instead.
I'm going to pass that question to Diana Benson. You know, she's former internal auditor, and I think she will give you a more thorough response, but they're one and the same. So I think Diana's on the call.
There she is.
Okay.
Okay, so commissioners, this is usually something that is really routine and non-eventful. And it feels like in our office, it happens all the time. We're either being audited or auditing someone else. And monitoring is, as Mary, I think she called it junior a while ago, we do audit activities during monitoring. And based on what we find while we're monitoring or while we're reviewing or whatever the engagement might be, which is just doing a little check-in, then we would expand that to what we would call the scope, expanding the scope for full audit activities. You're still doing some auditing activities even while you're monitoring. So we use them somewhat interchangeable. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, Diana.
I would also add that sub-recipient monitoring is a federal term. It is clearly outlined in federal law in 2 CFR 200 what the requirement is for the recipient to do a sub-recipient. I think hence the term sub-recipient monitoring, but there are very specific things that we're required to do under federal law when it's federal money.
Thank you.
And I want to add something there because I think this is important. You know, they also outline when we are not getting cooperation or we find these red flags, what our remedies are. And the one that fit this situation was to suspend their contract. So we were doing exactly what was in 2 CFR. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, yes. Mary, did we, I don't know, sometime back there in February, you put a request in for balances and bank statements and that information from CAC. Have you gotten that information yet?
Not yet, but they have given me a date on when they will have that to us. And this program, the rental assistance program, is what the state auditor determined they are auditing this year. So we really need that information because the auditors come in, I think, next week or the week after that. So they're going to be here soon to look at this program. But once I mentioned that we needed it for the state auditor, she was more cooperative. But really, our contracts give us every right to that information, and there is no way we could continue on with our audit without that information.
Can you think of any, I don't know, process or any possibility that there could be like almost a month delay and you still wouldn't have that information? Is there some reason that, you know, they don't get return information back from the bank or something? I'm trying to figure out the why the delay on that issue.
Yeah, I really can't answer that because I don't know what their financials look like, but it already has been just about a month delay. You know, nowadays everything's electronic, so I really can't answer that question.
Okay, and you haven't had any personal communication, I guess, with CAC yourself? I mean, have
no, I have not.
Yeah, so nobody from the board or the executive director has talked to you?
They've not talked to me. We've communicated in writing. I've asked for meetings, sent several doodle polls, and never got a response, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to talk to the county auditor. Okay. You know, because again, we work in partnership. We're not the enemy. We are hand holders. We're not hand slappers. We want to work with them to ensure that they do have tight controls. So eliminating the potential of fraud. And I don't know if you can ever do that, but you can at least tighten your controls to prevent that. And so I'm not sure why they have not met with me, but yeah, it's hard to work with people that aren't cooperative, I guess. I'm confused.
How about the information so that we were able to, so Brandon or someone could have followed up on those red flag issues? Did we ever get all of that information so that we might be able to have a possibility of making a recovery of funds? Because there's been such a long delay, I think it's going to be impossible to get money back so that we can help those that really do have it coming, I guess, if there is some fraud, but we haven't even been able to completely finish that process, have we?
No, we have not. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but I think you need the financial records, right, to really take a deeper dive.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful, as well as any additional research that CAC performed to verify that these payments were in fact appropriate and legitimate. We're happy to cross any of those red flags off our list, and knowing that those went to an eligible household, but we just haven't received that information. So that's some more work that needs to be done.
Yeah. And, I had conversations throughout this process with both the state auditor's office and Commerce, and they both kept saying you need to meet. So I made that effort, and for one reason or another, that didn't happen.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, any additional questions or comments?
No, I think I'd just reiterate what Commissioner Menzer said. This is a very good presentation, and hope we can make it available to those folks that might have concerns.
Yeah.
I would also like to add that we have yet to receive the repayment of the advance that we gave to the CAC.
Did you get a guarantee on that, Robin, by any chance, on when that was going to be forthcoming?
We had, the timeline on that is on March 17th. We had requested that the money be returned by March 24th. We received communication from Ms. York saying that they would pay it by April 7th. Subsequent communication from the CAC said there was a delay and that they would pay us by April 14th. They then requested, what is today's the 19th? So last week, I think on Thursday, they had requested the wire transfer information to make the payment, but we still have yet to receive the money.
Can you explain, Robin, what that, I mean, we know, but since there may be public that's tuning in for the first time, can you explain what that money is?
Yes. When we first contracted with CAC, there was a concern that they be able to make payments and still have adequate cash to be able to make the payments and have them clear. So in accordance with federal rules, we gave a cash advance to the CAC so that they'd be able to make payments. And I believe it was a $2 million advance. They then, you know, going along, they were making assistance payments. But when we suspended the contracts, they were no longer making payments. And federal rules require as short as possible a time between the advance of funding and the making of assistance payments. So we asked them to refund what was left of the advance. And we think it's going to be somewhere between $1.5 to $1.7 million. We did allow them to do final administrative costs, such as the work they had to do to provide these records to us, but that should be completed now. And really the purpose of the advance is to cover assistance payments, not administrative costs. So they need to return that to us.
And the contracts were suspended on February 23rd, correct?
Yes.
And was that what, when you said that, contracts being suspended, that we were actually following 2 CFR, which is, could you elaborate on that just a little bit for folks?
2 CFR 200 is federal law related to the management of federal funds and grants in particular. So when any award is made to a state, a local government, a tribe, some federal awards are made to nonprofit agencies, schools, what have you. 2 CFR 200 are the rules that you must follow to administer the grants. And they are very extensive. I've been carrying around my copy, it's huge, but they're clearly laid out. And the federal, they had been called the Uniform Guidelines. I think that's the new name for them. They had been circulars. When I started working for government, they were federal circulars on how to manage the money, which shows that these rules have been around for 40 years at least. And anyone who works with federal funding needs to understand the federal rules. So there are, again, extensive direction in these rules about how one should handle sub-awards and sub-recipients, and the requirements that you have to go through, what has to be in a contract, the sub-recipient monitoring, everything related to these is in federal law.
Robin, could you just tell us roughly how many dollars in the last almost 2 years that we've kind of funneled through the Community Action Council to help our community out?
I want to say that it was in the 26 million range, but Tom has a better handle on the amount.
Yeah, that total amount originally with all the contracts was probably closer to kind of 32, 33 million, I believe. I believe they've spent around 24, 25 million. Now with the suspension of contracts, they will not reach that 33 million. It's probably the total amount will be closer to 24, 25 million for the rent assistance activities.
Okay, and Tom Beans, we got you on the line here. I didn't know you were there. I would have asked you that question. So have you got a timeline back from CAC about when they're going to get you the information that you've requested? You and Robin both have requested. Can you give us an update on that?
So I don't have an update based on what Robin said. What she said is the latest information. They initially said, well, after a couple extensions, the last time they indicated was the 14th of repayment, and they have requested, and we did provide them the wire transfer information. For the outstanding information that Auditor Hall requested, they indicated April 21st that they would provide that information, and we've provided them a secure upload link where they can kind of upload that information in a secure, through basically a secure file transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. With that, it is 12 p.m. and we finished right on time. Unless commissioners, do you guys have any more commissioner items that you would like to discuss before we adjourn?
I got lots of commissioner items, but no time. No, I guess that'll come up another day.
I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you again, Mary, for